On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It's a Sunday afternoon, 24 hours after we watched the last episode of On the Track, and me and my immediate editorial team, that's Archie and Lilith, are trying to work out how we are going to start this next show.
Why don't we have Jeff the talking mongoose?
That's a good idea, Lilith.
In the 1930s, a remote farmhouse in Cashan's Gap on the Isle of Man became the focus of weird events. Following a poltergeist outbreak, a small strange creature appeared. The Irving family, who owned the house, heard the animal speak. It claimed to be a mongoose called Jeff, who had been born in India in 1852. Jeff haunted the family for almost a decade and became world famous. He was even mentioned in the British Parliament. Although the house at Cashan's Gap was demolished in 1971, Jeff remains a Fortean icon to this day.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's me, Barry Tadcaster, back again, and this is my old mate, Jeff the Talking Mongoose. I'm the eighth wonder of the world, me! Thou shalt never know what I am. I already know what you are, you're a talking mongoose. Oh, that's by the by. I was born in New Delhi in 1852. Hey! Well, you've aged quite well, ain't you, mate? Oh yes. Well, Jeff, what we got lined up on the show this week? Well, we'll be taking a look at Spike Milligan's tape recorder, and we'll be meeting a wounded bull in Victorian London.
Hooray for Jeff. He's a very clever mongoose.
I really like the old credits.
Well, we're still pretty much at the beginning of 2022, and I've got quite a few things that I want the CFZ to do over the next 12 months. And two of them are that I want there to be a 2022 yearbook, and I want to get another issue, preferably several more issues, of Animals and Men out. There haven't been issues of either of these since the beginning of 2020. Now I want to make a really important announcement about the yearbook. For most of the last 15 years, the yearbooks were co-edited by me and my late wife Karina. But now, because of her death, there is a vacancy for co-editor. And that vacancy has now been filled by my old friend Richard Muirhead. I've known him for 51 years now, and I can't think of anyone better to help me put together the regular miscellany of weird stories and weird research documents that comprises the CFZ yearbook. Thank you, Richard, for agreeing to take on this onerous task. And we are both very excited about being able to present a new yearbook to you very soon. If you have any submissions for the yearbook, or indeed for Animals and Men, can you please contact me at cfzjohn@gmail.com with your submissions, and I will get back to you very soon. And now for a less pleasant announcement. It has come to my attention that several of the ladies in the CFZ family have been being bullied on Facebook and possibly even on one of the CFZ Facebook pages. What happens outside the CFZ Facebook pages is beyond my control, but bullying will not be tolerated inside the Facebook pages of the CFZ. I have, as you all know, appointed my old friend V. McCrinnan as the Troll Finder General, and he has full carte blanche from me to permanently ban anybody that he finds to be guilty of bullying. Bullying is a horrible thing. I was bullied at school and I still bear the mental scars of it now. And I have been bullied more recently. As some of you know, 10 years ago there was a concerted campaign against quite a few of the CFZ members. It is a horrible thing to deal with. It's a horrible thing to try and get over. And I urge anybody who's doing this for fun to think twice about what they are doing, because I would like to think that you have to be a complete monster to want to destroy people's lives in that way. If you continue to do it in Facebook groups and other social media owned and run by the CFZ, we will find you and we will make sure that you never do it again. But now, boys and girls, let's go on to a subject that is far more entertaining. When you, both of you, are talking about giant snakes and giant crocodiles, do you think these crocodiles and snakes are new species, or do you think they are proof that what we think we know about known species, such as Indo-Pacific crocodiles, Nile crocodiles, reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, blah blah blah, is not correct?
I expect they're just excessively large known species.
Yeah, they're big individuals. I mean, you'll find now books are quoting the absolute maximum size for a saltwater crocodile is 23 feet 7 metres, which is nonsense. There was one measured at 28 feet 3 inches, shot by Mrs. Chris Pawlowski, whose husband Ron was a crocodile expert. Just because he doesn't have a load of letters after his name doesn't mean he's not an expert. He set up the first crocodile farm in Australia, and he was a recognised expert on the species. But yeah, mainstream science, it acts like a little boys' club. If you haven't got all these letters behind your name, you know, your work doesn't count, which is really annoying. And animals grow, the reptiles grow throughout their lives, and you get these freakishly big individuals. So if you've got a population which already gets excessively large, because with crocodiles you get different sizes in different parts of the world, like in parts of Uganda along one river, they don't often get bigger than 7 or 8 feet because they estivate for part of the year.
That's Nile crocodiles.
There's Nile crocodiles. But in other areas, you know, such as East Africa and Central Africa, you get very big ones. So say if you've got a very big population, undisturbed population where the average size is very big, you're going to get the occasional freak, long-living freak that grows huge.
What about the one that was found in a marsh in the Philippines a few years ago?
That was Lolong. That was the biggest one held in captivity. He was just over 20 feet long. They thought he was a man-eater, but when they pumped his stomach there was no human remains in it. And the people who'd seen him, including a guy who'd seen the big man-eater flip a canoe and bite a girl's head off, said the man-eater was bigger than this. The man-eater is called potol, which means slasher, and they say he's 29 to 30 feet long. and much darker green than almost black, but much darker green than Lolong was.
What happened to Lola?
Lolong died of he got a lung infection, a pneumonia, probably brought on by the stress of capture. And another thing is that they kept draining his pool, which they shouldn't have done, so people could see him. The pool he was in captivity was much too small, and they kept draining it, which probably stressed him more.
Yeah.
So this other one, Pothole, it came next to one of these floating houses they have on a Goosan Marsh, and the guy said it was interested in some chickens he'd got in a cage, and he looked at how long it was next to this pontoon, and then afterwards went back and measured it, and it was about 29 feet. So an animal of that, crocodile of that size, is going to be 3 tons.
Yeah. In Borneo, on the Kinabatangan River, there was a downed tree, and it must have been about 35 feet long, probably 35 feet long. And our guide on the boat told us that there was a crocodile that had been basking next to it, and it was about a foot or two longer than the tree was. And we saw the log, you know, we obviously didn't see the crocodile, but there were some massive crocodiles on that river. We saw plenty of them. So yeah, possibly.
People are always sending me interesting stories, and over what is euphemistically known as the festive season, I amassed quite a few of them. So I'm just going to try and clear the decks a little bit. Look at this. This is a story sent to me by the one and only Miss Maxine. About 25 years ago, various cronies of mine and I used to hang out at a pub called the Clifton in the middle of Exeter. It's still there, and I've just found out via those lovely people at Google Earth. What's this got to do with raping baboons? Well, nothing really, except for the fact that my cronies and I had some sort of fixation with the word baboon, and we had a pub quiz team which was usually called something to do with baboons, and for some reason which has never really been clear, when one or the other of us used to wander into the pub and the others were at the bar, somebody would shout "Yip yip" and the rest would shout "Baboon." This is just part of my adolescent silliness, except for the fact that my adolescence reached far beyond the time that most people's adolescence reached, and this took place in my late 30s. But everybody knows that I'm interested in baboons, and so when baboon-related stories turn up in the press, people are likely to send them to me. And this one, despite the fact that it is a very peculiar story with rather sordid undertones, in fact rather sordid overtones, believe it or not, it has both historical and several cryptozoological aspects to it, which I think should be made clear in this segment. When I was a boy at Bideford Grammar School, our Latin master, for some reason known best only to himself, decided that it was a good idea to read excerpts from this book, Daniel Mannix's We Who Are About to Die, to his 11 and 12-year-old pupils. This completely upset me at the time and gave me nightmares, which I have to admit I still have to this day. And if only for me, I think this part of the show needs a trigger warning. But what's it got to do with baboons, I hear you ask? Well, amongst all the other accounts of crucifixions, people being fed alive to animals and disemboweled in public and being burnt alive, there was a particularly unpleasant account of children being raped by baboons as a form of entertainment for the Roman hoi polloi. Whether or not this actually happened, or whether this was something which Mr. Mannix made up himself, I neither know nor care. But it gave me a series of really unpleasant nightmares, and as I say, occasionally I still have them to this day. Roll on 7 or 8 years, and I was reading On the Track of Unknown Animals for the first time, and I was surprised to find that there's a passage that Heuvelmans wrote which actually corroborates what Mannix had written. He talked about how somebody with a pet baboon in one of the islands off the south of France in the years soon after the war had found that the baboon was becoming sexually aroused by some of the human women on the beach. It turned out that this account originated with none other than G.A. Boulanger, who was somebody I have always held in great esteem. He was the author of a book called The Aquarium Book, which has been one of my go-to reference books anytime this past half-century. Boulanger also noted that sexual attacks on women in the more rural parts of South Africa by baboons were also quite well known. So, in fact, despite the fact that this is quite a shocking story for 21st century eyes and ears, it is actually not at all without precedent. But what on earth has it got to do with cryptozoology? Well, there is a creature that has been reported from quite a few parts of East Africa that has become known as the Nandi bear, or chemazet. Nandi bear because apparently, allegedly, hang on, Archie, get up. Apparently it looks like a bear, and chemazet because that's its name in one of the African languages. The interesting thing about bears in Africa is there aren't any. Or, no, that's actually not quite true. There is one small subspecies, small in both senses of the word as in uncommon and small as in diminutive, subspecies of the brown bear that used to live in the Atlas Mountains of North Africa, but they have not been reported convincingly for many years, and the smart money is that they're probably extinct. But if there is a bear-like creature that's known from East Africa, what could it be? Well, Heuvelmans suggested, and I tend to agree with him, that it's probably a mixture of reports of all sorts of things. It is reports of chimpanzees that are out of their natural area. It is reports of a possibly unknown species of giant hyena, or at least outsized specimens of the hyenas that are known from that area, and it has been suggested with quite a lot of sense and quite a lot of evidence suggesting this is true, that it is possibly at least one of the creatures that is responsible for the sightings of the Nandi bear is a giant baboon. Again, whether it's one of the species that are known from that area, large and particularly vicious specimens of them, or whether it's an unknown species, remains to be seen. But the fact that there are sexually aggressive, very violent and rather unpleasant baboons of known species across Africa would suggest that the idea of a baboon being one of the progenitors of the Nandi bear is not at all impossible. But what about chalicotheres, I hear you all ask, except most of you probably don't know what a chalicothere is, so let me rephrase that. What about chalicotheres? I hear those of you who know that chalicotheres are an extinct clawed type of ungulate that lived up until about 750,000 years ago in various parts of the world, including Africa. Unusually for ungulates, like I said, they were clawed, they weren't hooved. And lots of people, up to and including my old mate Clin Keeling, who died about 15 years ago, have claimed, mostly following Heuvelmans, that the chalicothere makes a perfect identity for the Nandi bear. I have a horrible suspicion that despite the fact that people like Clin claimed that they lived in East Africa up until the great Rinderpest outbreak, which wiped out nearly all the ungulates in the region round about 1898 to 1900, that until then, that is what the big animals roaming the East African forests and terrifying people because of their huge appearance and the fact that they were predating on men, women, children and livestock, that is exactly what the Nandi bear was, a chalicothere of some species. But to me that's never made sense, mostly because, like all other ungulates, past and present, the chalicothere was a herbivore and would probably have run in the opposite direction if somebody had seen them and started waving spears in the air and shouting, rather than staying around to fight and to bolster up the reputation of the Nandi bear, whatever it happens to be. I'm afraid, to my mind, this is an example of what happens when people take the path of least resistance when looking for the identity of a cryptid, when they just choose something that is extinct but looks good, looks right. It's the same as when one of my colleagues claimed that a series of sightings of a pterodactyl in parts of South Wales was actually a Philippines monkey-eating eagle. It may have looked like a very good pterodactyl, but there was no accounts of there being a Philippines monkey-eating eagle in captivity anywhere in Britain at that time, and as far as I know there weren't any even in Europe, and the nearest ones were, you've guessed it, in the Philippines. So it looked good in the picture books, it looks great in that boy's book of animals that your great aunt Mabel gave you for your 15th birthday, but it is no use as a piece of cogent evidence. And I'm afraid that's what I think about the chalicothere and the Nandi bear. Another thing I just have to bring in, Boulanger died in 1936, so when he was talking about it being just after the war, he meant just after the First World War, not just after the Second World War. But that really is nitpicking, and I don't think it has any relevance to the main argument that we're putting forward here today. And to summarise, what is this argument? Lilith, Archie both want to know. Well, the argument is that Miss Maxine sent me a quirky and rather unpleasant news story because she thought it would be interesting to me, and she was perfectly right, it was very interesting to me. What she, and probably most of the other people who read it, didn't know, now will you stop it, you two, didn't know, was that it is yet another piece of corroborative evidence towards the burgeoning amount of evidence suggesting that the creature behind the East African stories of the Nandi bear from the past few centuries, or at least one of the main creatures behind these stories, is some species of large, if not giant, baboon.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when there's a new show to watch. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of another show, and I hope you enjoyed it, despite the fact that Archie and Lilith have been somewhat disruptive throughout the show, with Archie jumping on and off my lap, and Lilith at least twice deciding to take a pop at him because she disapproves of his actions. But that's what happens when you've got cats and dogs, and this is what happens throughout my day-to-day life. I sit here in this chair working most of the day, most of the week, most of the time, and I have Archie and Lily on and off my lap throughout the day, and here we go. It goes against my personal brand of morality to kick the animals off just because I happen to be making a film. Well, thank you for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it. One point I would like to make is that too many people of my age, and just in case you didn't know, I'm 63 this summer, complain that young people are far too sensitive and brand them as snowflakes because they want to be treated with more respect and more sensitivity. Well, as you've seen from this episode, back when I was 11 or 12, I was read stuff by a teacher that scarred me for life, and I wish I could have gone back in a time machine now and demanded that this teacher and other teachers from my alma mater treated me with far more sensitivity than they actually did. My life would, I think, have been a much better experience had they done so. But that was then, and this is now. And although it's the end of the episode, it's only another 7 days until Saturday afternoon rolls around again. 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon, it's CFZ on the track time. And I'm going to be there, probably with Archie, certainly with Lilith, and quite likely with V and Louis, who watch it remotely and join in the live chat. And if we're there, and you're there, come on V, see if you can guess what's going to happen now. I'll be seeing you.